Hey Panda, Panda here, and it looks like today we got another Bungie newsletter. This time it is a Season 20 weapon preview. This includes buffs, nerfs, other changes to other weapons you might be interested in. I'm going to go over it real quick just to get you up to speed if you don't like reading. A small little tidbit at the beginning of the newsletter this week is that they are enabling the red reticle for PC players. If you're on console and using a controller, you'll notice that when you hover over a target, it is actually going to turn your reticle red. They're enabling this functionality for PC as well. I'm not sure why they didn't do it sooner, but if you've been wanting that, you got it. We've been in a linear fusion rifle damage meta for quite some time now, but it looks like things are about to change. In the newsletter today, Bungie let us know that linear fusion rifles against champions, mini-bosses, and bosses, as well as vehicles actually, is being reduced by 15%. The only linear fusion rifles not affected by this change are the Sleeper Simulant and the Queen Breaker. So what does this mean? It means that your linear fusion rifle won't turn damage phases into easy mode anymore. You're gonna have to work a little bit harder to pump out the same amount of damage. Will this shift the damage meta too much? I'm not really sure. Linear fusion rifles will still probably be a solid pick for your raider dungeons, but if you're going for top tier DPS, there might be better options now. Machine guns are getting a small boost to their damage at 10%. This will also affect PvP numbers as well, which will make machine guns a little bit more forgiving in PvP. At tier 6 resilience, a high impact frame time to kill is going from a 0.67 seconds to 0.5, rapid fire being 0.53 to 0.47, and the adaptives are being unchanged. Now that's not super important. LMGs did not see a lot of use in PvP regardless, but it does get interesting later in the notes here. Increased reserve ammo by 50% at 0 inventory stat and 20% at 100 inventory stat. Now what is inventory stat? Inventory stat is actually a hidden number that only Bungie can really see, but what it should really communicate to us is that your lower reserve LMGs that you've been keeping in your vault are getting quite a substantial buff to their reserve ammo, and your high ammo reserved LMGs are getting a smaller buff. Now this might be enough to tip the damage meta in the favor of the light machine gun, but we'll just have to wait and see. Grenade launchers, specifically heavy ones, are getting quite a substantial change in the upcoming patch here. It's going to increase damage versus champions, mini-bosses, bosses, and vehicles by 20%, and miners actually getting increased by 40%. The projectile collision, making it slightly easier to land hits, is getting increased, and the total blast radius by 1 meter. Parasite, the exotic grenade launcher from the Witch Queen campaign, is unchanged. The last patch for shotguns included reducing their RNG by giving them all a set pellet spread depending on their archetype. Now, these reticles were unmoving. They did not change with jumps or while using barrels like smoothbore, which actually increase the spread angle. With this next update, your shotgun reticle will more accurately reflect where your pellets are going to go depending on whether you're in the air or using anything that's going to affect the cone of your shotgun. This is a nice quality of life change that might make your shotgun feel a bit more consistent. Before this patch, your kinetic weapons against unshielded combatants do a total of 5% more damage. This also includes stasis weapons. Bungie is saying that this made the kinetic slot and stasis weapons were straight up better. I very much disagree with this. I think they're very bad, but regardless of what I think, they are actually increasing this bonus depending on whether or not your kinetic weapon is using primary or special ammo. So your primary weapon damage multiplier is going to be increased from 5% to 10%, it looks like, and the kinetic special weapon damage multiplier is getting increased from the previous 5% to 15%, and they're also hinting at a new kinetic damage perk type coming in Lightfall. The Queen Breaker exotic linear fusion rifle has been out of the meta for quite some time now, but you'll notice that it got left out of the 15% linear fusion rifle nerf, and its blind capability is actually getting upgraded to actually interact with Arc 3.0 blind and have the potential to chain to other targets. This is very cool. The Ruinous Effigy exotic Void Trace rifle didn't feel voidy enough, so they are adding a suppress capability when you use the transmutation sphere to slam down on a target. The Leviathan's Breath exotic bow has been pretty out of the meta for a little bit. It still does very solid damage, and it will actually do even more after this next patch. When you perfect draw the bow now and shoot a target with it, it's going to apply volatile. Also in PvP, its precision damage is being upped from 396 to 442, which will allow you to once again one-hit kill all supers in PvP. The bow is also getting a buff to its damage against champions by 30%. 25%. Keep in mind that this bow has intrinsic unstoppable abilities, so it might become a top contender for GMs and even raids next season. 1000 Voices, the exotic fusion rifle, is also seeing its fair share of changes with the upcoming patch. Each explosion will now apply 10 plus 5 more with the Ember of Ashes fragment equipped Scorch stacks. What this means is that with Ember of Ashes, shooting a target and hitting all of the explosions will immediately cause an ignition. If you're a fan of the hand cannon Sunshot, you'll be happy to know that its explosions are also going to be given Scorch stacks as well. Explosion on kill now applies 10 plus 5 with Ember of Ashes, Scorch stacks to the target. Polaris Lance, the exotic scout rifle, is also seeing a change as well. The perfect 5th shot is going to now apply 40 plus 20 with Ember of Ashes, Scorch stacks instead of a custom Polaris Lance burn. The exotic rocket launcher Two-Tailed Fox is also getting a change. The solar rocket will now apply 60 plus 30 more with Ember of Ashes, Scorch stacks instead of a burn. The Void rocket will already suppress, and the catalyst will complete the trifecta. What they're hinting at here is some sort of Arc 3.0 effect with the upcoming season. Prometheus lens is getting incandescent. That's cool. And finally, we have the Grand Overture, which already saw its 50% missile damage buff in an earlier patch, and it is also getting tied into Arc 3.0. The catalyst will now use Arc Blind instead of a arbitrary blind. Osmosis, the perk that changes your kinetic damage type when you throw a grenade, has already been reworked to work with Strand. And for you elemental capacitor enjoyers, looks like Strand is going to add plus 20 airborne effectiveness and 25 with the enhanced version of the perk. It looks like the previous Eager Edge nerf is getting walked back slightly. No longer will it deactivate when you are moving faster than 35. Well, that's weird. It says 35 milliseconds here on the Bungie site. I believe they meant 35 meters per second. It will now deactivate correctly after a single melee swing. They will have reduced the base lunge distance buff from 2 to 1.8, reduced the airborne lunge distance penalty from 25 to 20%. The enhanced perk now increases the lunge distance slightly, back to 2. So what does this really mean for Eager Edge? It means Eager Edge will, in general, feel better to use, and I'm glad to see that Bungie came to their senses and reverted this nerf. Blinding grenades are getting renamed to disorienting grenades, so that's something. The Viced Stinger origin trait that had a chance to refill your entire magazine when dealing damage to a combatant is going from 100% of the magazine to only 25. This is a very significant nerf to every single Viced weapon, just because the origin trait was so much better than the rest. Is this a fair nerf? Probably. Is it still sad to see? Absolutely. And there you have it. That is everything we saw in the February 1st Bungie weapon tuning preview. Hope you enjoyed watching. Stick around for the next one.